Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're looking at Genesis, the Deep Origin of Societies by Edward O. Wilson. E.O. Wilson was an evolutionary biologist who mostly studied insects, and he was known for developing sociobiology, which is the study of how biological factors play roles for behaviors, which is a way of saying that naturally selected genes can shape behaviors. E.O. Wilson was a scientist and he published a lot of research papers and he wrote a lot of books. And Genesis was one of the last ones he wrote before he died in December of 2021. E.O. Wilson is one of the people to have won two Pulitzer Prizes, one for On Human Nature and one for The Ants. I've read a few of his books now, and I have to say, I really like him. I was thinking about making a video of best books that I read last year, and Wilson's Social Conquest of Earth would have been on that list. And this book had some parts that were just so good, just like in the Social Conquest of Earth. And I feel that despite being an expert in ants, it's when he writes about humans that really captures my interest. I suppose there could be an anthropocentric component to that, huh? So what's this book about? Well, it's really mostly about the things that I've already mentioned with E.O. Wilson. The main idea is social species and mostly ones who achieve the highest level of social behavior called eusocial species. We look at some of the questions surrounding these eusocial species, like what makes them, and if it's such a successful evolutionary strategy, why has it only been achieved a small number of times in nature? If you're wondering exactly what a eusocial species is, well, humans qualify, I think. It's a species who has developed advanced caste systems with a division of labor and especially classes who sacrifice their own reproduction in order to benefit the group as a whole. Good examples are found in groups like ants, and termites, and aphids, too. Some of the members of these societies' only job is to really care for the next generation. And then you have others who are the genetic stock. Think the queen of an ant nest. Oh, and the nest itself is an important part too. So it's like a big society where everyone falls into one of a number of classes, but you might think of the entire society as kind of like one big superorganism. And if you study evolution, you may have heard that it's like a struggle for everything to get its genes into the next generation, and these are the successful ones who are able to pass on the very genes that made them successful. But these eusocial species kind of defy that. If reproduction is the big idea in evolution, how can these castes have arisen which aren't even concerned with necessarily with reproduction? It's pretty interesting, and Wilson builds on concepts throughout each chapter, and the final chapter is about us, the humans. And it's just so cool how he describes our ancestors on the African savannah a couple million years ago while applying some of the concepts that we've covered earlier in the book and going over the emergence of eusociality in humans. I will say that a lot of what he says in this last chapter does kind of sound like he may have just made it up. I mean, a lot of the studies that he cites weren't actually on ancient humans per se, so he's kind of forced to do a fair bit of extrapolating, inferring, and assuming. Bear in mind, Wilson was a world renowned titan in biology, albeit mostly in ant societies, not humans. But I mean, just take a look at the guy's wiki page if you don't know who he is. And I'll say it again, when he talks about humans, like he did in the social conquest of Earth, I almost get goosebumps. It's just incredible stuff to think about. That being said, unless you're really into evolution, a good chunk of this book might not be all that interesting to you. Maybe it will, but he's going into detail on some concepts like kin selection, group selection, and inclusive fitness in different organisms. And these things can be pretty dry. But if you like this kind of thing, Wilson is great. And I'll link my reviews to his other books because they were great too, especially The Social Conquest of Earth. One last thing about Genesis, this book was only 125 pages long, so when I finished it, I was wanting more. And he ends it with such a good chapter, so it just wasn't as much as I was wanting. But that does mean that I really enjoyed the book. So far, E.O. Wilson has really delivered for me. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you think the idea of social aspect of animal behavior and evolution are interesting, this book will fascinate you. And this is one of those guys who he's an author, yes, but he's a true scientist. Check out Genesis: The Deep Origin of Societies by E.O. Wilson.